The great glass dome of orbital station Helios stretched high above the gathered crowd, revealing a vast canvas of stars beyond. Lights from dozens of alien ships blinked in the distance, orbiting slowly around the station like quiet observers of a moment that had been years in the making. Inside the dome, everything was perfect. Polished floors reflected the soft ambient lights. Alien dignitaries from across the galaxy moved through the cultural expo like drifting shadows, robes flowing, eyes glowing, antennas twitching. Each species had its own section, each exhibit a structured display of heritage and pride. Everything followed rules, geometry, harmony, mathematical precision. Everything, except Earth's corner. A chaotic swirl of color lit up one wall. Holographic brushstrokes floated in midair, shifting with the viewer's movement. Music, offbeat, emotional, pulsed from the floor tiles. A scent of burned wood and rain drifted through the air, programmed to match the visuals. The name of the installation hovered in soft, pulsing light. Echoes of Earth, by Jax Voss. Jax stood nearby, watching the crowd. He wore a simple black jacket with a paint-stained collar. His short dark hair was slightly unkempt, and his eyes, though calm, held the flicker of nervous fire. This was his biggest exhibit yet. The moment Earth's culture had waited for. A chance to finally be heard by the galaxy. But the crowd didn't understand. A tall alien with emerald skin cocked its head. Another whispered in a language Jax couldn't quite catch, but he knew laughter when he heard it. A trio of beings floated by without even glancing at the piece. Then came the voice Jax had dreaded. "A tantrum in color," said Vorjon, his words sharp and cold. The crowd turned. Vorjon stepped forward, his long black robe moving like liquid. His tall figure loomed, his 6 fingers folded in front of him. A respected cultural critic from the Zinthari High Council, his opinion carried weight across 1,000 worlds. "This is what Earth considers art?" he asked, his voice echoing through the dome. Scattered lights. Unstable music. And, is that smoke? "It's atmosphere," Jax replied calmly, trying not to react. Vorjon raised a brow. "Atmosphere? It smells like confusion. This display lacks order. It lacks form. There is no symmetry. No mathematical base. It's noise." Some in the crowd chuckled. Others nodded. A few turned to leave. Jax stepped forward. "Human art isn't meant to follow rules," he said. "It's meant to feel. To reflect the inside, messy, raw, and real." Vorjon turned to him, unimpressed. "Then it is no wonder your species is so often misunderstood. Emotion without control is chaos, not culture." He walked away, robes dragging, and with him went the silence. Whispers began to spread. Cameras hovered overhead, broadcasting the scene across the Federation. Jax stood alone, his exhibit glowing behind him, bright, confused, beautiful. Hours later, he sat in the quiet of Earth's cultural wing. The council representative, a woman named Dr. Alara Quinn, stood in front of him with a tight expression. "You have one more chance," she said. "They've scheduled a final performance at the end of the expo. A closing statement. If we fail again, Earth will lose its place in the Federation's cultural exchange." Jax looked up. His pride was wounded, but not dead. "Then I'll give them something they'll never forget," he said quietly. He turned back to his installation, the colors now dim. Somewhere deep inside him, an idea began to form. Jax Voss stared at the screen in front of him. His face was reflected faintly on the glass. Tired eyes, pinched jaw, lips pressed into a flat line. The galactic media had picked up Vorjon's words within minutes of the incident. Every news stream, every message board, every feed was full of the same phrase. Tantrum in color. It was a joke now. A meme. Edited clips of Jax's exhibit were floating around with circus music. Alien influencers mocked it in skits. Even some humans joined in, trying to ride the wave of attention. But for Jax, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like failure. He stood and walked slowly across the empty Earth gallery. The air was still heavy with the fading sense of his failed installation, smoke, wet earth, ozone. The exhibit was now shut down. Maintenance bots moved quietly around the room, dismantling the floating projections and sound emitters. Dr. Alara Quinn entered, her posture firm, her tone neutral but clipped. "They've given us 6 days," she said. "One final chance to present something at the expo's closing ceremony. Something they will understand." Jax didn't answer at first. She walked closer. "This is bigger than you now. You're not just an artist, Jax. You represent Earth. If you fail again, we'll be seen as culturally irrelevant. We'll be excluded from future federated showcases." He turned toward her. "They don't want to understand. They want numbers. Symmetry. Harmony. He paused, then added, "We don't make art like that." "Then find a way to meet them halfway," she said. "Softer now. You still have a voice. Use it." She left him with that, and Jack sat down on the bench facing the dark wall where his exhibit used to be. For the first time, he felt doubt settle deep inside him, not just about the exhibit, but about whether human expression could ever matter here. The next day, Jax wandered the vast halls of the expo. He avoided the Earth Wing. Instead, he visited other cultures' displays, trying to see the galaxy through their eyes. In the Zyrellin Dome, patterns of light flowed in perfect symmetry, triangles nested within triangles, colors shifting in a mathematically programmed rhythm. A guide explained how each color represented a specific emotion and could be mathematically calculated. The Zyrellins believed emotion should be controlled, not expressed. In the Hall of Var, huge sound pillars vibrated at precise frequencies. The Var believed beauty was in resonance. Their songs had no lyrics, only tone. It was calming, orderly, and cold. In the Zinthari Pavilion, Vorjan's people displayed art as crystalline structures. Each sculpture was a fractal, repeating patterns perfectly. No chaos, no mistakes. Only logic, order, and balance. Jack studied it all with quiet frustration. It was beautiful, in a way, but it didn't speak to him. It didn't feel like life. Back in the Central Plaza, Jack sat alone, watching people float and walk past. A soft voice caught his attention. "Your exhibit made me feel strange," someone said. He turned. A young alien stood nearby, small, with a soft glow to its skin and wide, curious eyes. It was a Larnian, an aquatic species known for their musical speech. "I didn't understand it," the being continued, its voice flowing like water. "But it made something move inside me, like remembering something I never lived." Jax blinked, surprised. "That's kind of the point." The Larnian smiled. "I hope you make another one." Then it walked away, vanishing into the crowd. Jack sat still for a long time. One being, one spark of connection. Maybe that was enough to start with. He returned to his studio space and began scribbling on his tablet. Not sketches, not plans. Feelings, words, memories. He wrote. A star dying slowly. A child laughing in the rain. A planet spinning alone but dreaming of being seen. He wasn't sure what it would become yet, but the seed had been planted. And this time, he would build something not just for Earth, but for the galaxy. The studio lights hummed quietly above Jack's Voss as he stood at the center of his empty workspace. The space felt larger than usual, emptier. His last exhibit had been torn down and boxed away. All that remained was a blank slate, white walls, open floor, and his thoughts. He tapped his stylus on the tablet in his hand, scrolling through the notes he'd taken since his walk through the expo. Words and fragments of ideas glowed softly on the screen. Emotion equals chaos? Harmony through contrast? Alien minds don't process memory like humans. Can a feeling be engineered? Jax wasn't looking to make another Earth-only exhibit. That had already failed. He was trying something different now, something that might let emotion speak across species. But how could he do that when even humans struggled to explain their feelings? He turned and activated the hologrid. Lines of light formed a cube around him. Start a new project, he said. The system responded in a calm voice. New file created. Project title. He hesitated, then spoke. Pulse of a dying star. The title sat in the air before him. It was bold, a little dramatic, but it felt true. Over the next hours, Jax filled the space with motion. He dragged elements into the air, visuals, sounds, textures. He layered glowing waves of color, changing shapes based on tempo and rhythm. He programmed lights to pulse like a heartbeat, matched with the sound of breathing, slow, fast, then still. But none of it felt right yet. It looked good. It sounded balanced. But it lacked something. He paused, stepped back, and rubbed his eyes. What was missing? He remembered what the young Larnian said. It made something move inside me. Maybe that's what he needed to find, a way to move something inside them. Jax left the studio and made his way to the lower levels of Helios. Down where the alien engineers worked, where translators and tech developers built interfaces between minds, species, and machines. He met with an old contact, Kel, a Varnari sound technician with 4 arms and a brain wired for complex emotional frequency mapping. You want me to help aliens feel your memories? Kel said, skeptical. Yes, Jax replied. Not just see or hear. Feel. Kel clicked his mouthparts thoughtfully. That's tricky. Most species don't process memory the way humans do. Emotions aren't stored in the same neural areas. I'm not asking them to feel exactly what I feel, Jax said. Just something real. Something close. Kel finally nodded. Then you'll need resonance mapping and an emotion sequence emulator. I can help, but this is unstable tech. It'll need testing. Do it, Jax said without hesitation. They worked for 2 days straight. Jax fed the system pieces of his own memories, personal ones. His mother's voice humming while she painted. The way a thunderstorm sounded against the roof during his first heartbreak. The rush of standing on a rooftop as the sun rose over the flooded edges of old New York. Each was converted into digital code. Each was layered into the performance. Jax began to build around these moments, crafting an experience that didn't require understanding, only presence. He added shifting lights that reacted to breath and body temperature. A sonic field that vibrated differently depending on the species' physiology. Holograms that reshaped based on emotional response. It wasn't a painting. It wasn't a sculpture. It was a feeling machine. Late one night, exhausted but focused, Jax tested the system on himself. He stepped into the center of the dome and activated the sequence. Suddenly, the room dimmed. A star appeared above him, massive, red, pulsing slowly. It grew darker with each beat. A soft hum filled the air, deep and steady. Then, voices, his own memories, distorted and blended, rose and fell like wind. Grief, wonder, hope, loneliness. It all flowed around him. He stood still, breathing deeply. And then, quietly, he smiled. This was it. This was the bridge. He looked at the countdown on his panel. 3 days until the final performance. Just enough time to finish building the heart of the piece. The studio lights buzzed low as Jax Voss moved carefully through his workspace. It no longer felt empty. Floating displays surrounded him. Waveforms, color palettes, emotional resonance charts, alien neural feedback graphs. Each hologram flickered with purpose, alive with layers of his work. The feeling machine, pulse of a dying star, was almost ready. But almost wasn't enough. 3 days remained until the final performance, and pressure pressed down on him like a slow crush of gravity. Jax adjusted the central core of the installation, a large glowing orb suspended in a force field at the center of the room. Inside the orb was a simulated dying star, its energy flickering in time with programmed heartbeats. Every pulse triggered shifts in sound and light, spreading through the room like ripples in water. He tested the emotion sequence emulator again. It translated his childhood memory of watching lightning over the Atlantic Ocean into a wave of sound and dim blue light. The sound didn't mean anything to the alien mind, but the emotional frequency, a quiet awe, registered in the system's bio-readings. Close. But not enough. Kel, the Varnari engineer, clacked his limbs as he adjusted the sensors. You need stronger moments. Big emotion. Something they can't ignore. I don't want to scream at them, Jax said. I want them to feel. Then give them what you fear, Kel replied. Give them what cost you something. That hit Jax harder than he expected. Later, alone in the dark studio, Jax recorded something he had never shared. He stood at the center of the platform, eyes closed, and whispered into the mic. The last time I saw my brother, we fought. I never got to tell him I forgave him. I still hear his laugh sometimes when I paint. He fed that memory into the sequence. The system translated it into deep red light and slow, rising sound, like morning wrapped in warmth. Jax felt it shudder through his chest. That's when he realized he wasn't building an exhibit. He was building a confession. The next morning, the Cultural Expo was busier than ever. Delegates from across the galaxy roamed the vast halls. News drones hovered in the air, chasing interviews and rumors. Word had spread about Jax's upcoming final performance. Everyone wanted to see if Earth's chaotic artist would embarrass his people again or surprise the galaxy. Vorjan entered the studio without warning. Jax turned as the tall Zenthari stepped through the open archway. His robe shimmered with black and silver threads. His eyes scanned the unfinished installation with disdain. Still chasing feelings, Mr. Voss? Vorjan said. I'm not chasing them, Jax replied. I'm showing them. Vorjan walked slowly around the orb, inspecting the flickering light. Do you really believe this will change anything? That noise and color can reach minds evolved over millennia to suppress emotion? I don't care what you've evolved to suppress, Jax said, stepping closer. I care what's still hidden underneath. Vorjan's lips curled slightly, almost a smirk. You are persistent, I'll give you that. He turned to leave, pausing at the exit. Just remember, he said, if you fail again, Earth will be remembered not as a cultural contributor, but as a loud, confused species that mistook chaos for meaning. After he left, Jax stood in silence. The words stung, but they also sharpened his focus. He spent the next 2 days refining every element. Each moment in the installation was timed precisely. Memory triggers activated in slow waves. Light and sound were woven into emotion curves. The system adjusted in real time to audience biosigns, heart rates, eye movement, even subconscious chemical shifts. It would be different for every viewer. No two people, or aliens, would experience the same version. That was the point. On the final night before the performance, Jack stood in the center of the room, alone, surrounded by the quiet pulse of the simulation. He ran one last check. Everything worked. Everything was ready. He looked at the silent dying star above him and whispered, "Tomorrow, you speak for us all." He walked out of the room, heart pounding. The next time he stepped inside, the galaxy would be watching. The main auditorium of orbital station Helios was unlike any other room in the galaxy. Shaped like a dome within a dome, it could hold over 10,000 beings, humans, aliens, and hybrids alike. Some floated, some stood, some hovered silently on anti-grav platforms. The walls shimmered with shifting light, adapting to each species' ideal vision range. Every seat was full. Jax Voss stood behind the curtain, watching from a narrow gap. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. The performance would begin in less than 2 minutes. He breathed slowly, centering himself, grounding his thoughts in silence. He saw the front row, the Galactic Council, media drones blinking red, and Vorsian calm, unmoved, arms folded. A voice spoke in Jax's earpiece. "All systems ready." He gave a single nod. "Begin sequence." The lights in the auditorium dimmed. The murmur of voices dropped into quiet. A soft hum spread across the room as the curtain lifted. And then silence. In the center of the auditorium, suspended by nothing visible, a single glowing orb appeared. The simulation of a red giant star. Its surface pulsed faintly, as if it were breathing. Then came the first wave. A low, deep sound vibrated across the audience. Not a song, just a tone. It echoed with a sense of weight, of distance, of something too old to understand but too big to ignore. The orb dimmed. A soft, golden light spread outward. From the floor, walls, and ceiling, fragments of Jax's memories began to appear, not as images, but as sensations. Faint shadows of a child's laughter. The smell of rain. A mother's voice humming in the dark. Each was layered with light and sound, translated into frequencies recognizable by dozens of alien nervous systems. One Zenthari ambassador blinked. Her breathing slowed. A Varnari closed all 6 eyes and tilted his head. Several beings across the room began to shift, confused, uncertain. The second wave came stronger. The star in the center began to shrink. The sound changed, higher now, trembling. Color spread quickly, red into violet, violet into cold blue. The memory of heartbreak vibrated through the room. The installation pushed the emotions forward, not with language, but with rhythm, breath, and heat. Jax's voice came next, soft and steady, broadcast only through the internal neural channeling system. "I remember standing in a hospital room, holding a hand that would never hold mine back. I remember not knowing what to say, so I said nothing. That silence, it echoes still. The room held stillness like glass. No words were spoken. No translation was needed. Emotions rolled through the crowd like waves. Some resisted. Others trembled. A young alien in the second row gasped and clutched their chest. A Zenthari child nearby reached for their parent's hand, their eyes wide and wet. And then the climax. The orb collapsed inward. A supernova of color exploded across the auditorium in total silence. A final wave of sensation, loss, awe, warmth, sorrow spread like ripples in space. In that moment, species that had never known human pain felt it. Jack stepped into view at last. No spotlight followed him, just the soft glow of the fading star. He stood there for several long seconds before he spoke. His voice was clear, calm, and human. "You call it chaos. I call it being alive. We don't make art to impress you. We make it to survive. And sometimes, to say what words can't." He paused, letting the silence return. "If you don't understand it, that's okay. But feel it. Just once. That's enough." Then he stepped back. The star flickered once more and went dark. The performance ended. Silence stretched. Long, heavy. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, a single pair of hands, human, clapped once. Then again. Slowly, others joined. Different rhythms, different hands, wings, limbs. A ripple of response, awkward at first, but growing. In the front row, Vorsian remained still. Then, slowly, he lowered his arms. His fingers twitched, just once. His expression hadn't changed, but his eyes held something new. A question, or perhaps a memory. He stood and left without a word. Jax watched him go. He didn't need applause. He didn't need validation. He had felt it. The room had felt it. And now, they could never unfeel it. The next morning, Orbital Station Helios hummed with quiet excitement. News streams buzzed through the air. Digital feeds scrolled across walls and wristbands. Words like transformative, universal, and unforgettable echoed across hundreds of alien languages. Jax Voss stood alone in the now empty auditorium. The floating orb had been dismantled. The light systems were turned off. No sound remained. Just the faint scent of warm air and metal, like the memory of a fire that had long gone out. He didn't need to be told how the performance had been received. The galaxy was already reacting. But Jax didn't feel proud. Not yet. He felt quiet, still processing what had happened, what he had given away. He had shown them grief, joy, shame, love, all without trying to explain it. He had let them feel it. The heavy doors behind him opened with a soft hiss. Dr. Alara Quinn entered, her expression calm for once, a small smile tugging at her lips. They voted this morning, she said. Earth will remain in the Cultural Council, with full ambassador status. Jax let out a slow breath. He hadn't even realized he was holding it. There's more, Alara added. Several species have requested emotional training from human artists. Some even want joint exhibits. He gave a soft laugh. Let's hope they don't expect me to teach them how to cry. They don't want to cry, she said. They want to understand why we do. They walked together through the halls of the station, past species Jax couldn't even name. Some nodded to him in passing. Others simply looked at him longer than usual, not with judgment, but with something like respect or curiosity. In one of the youth learning centers, they paused. Behind a clear panel, a small group of alien children sat in a circle around a table. They had paints, musical instruments, and broken pieces of clay. They weren't trying to make anything perfect. They were mixing colors, humming, laughing, creating shapes that had no purpose except to exist. One small creature smeared blue paint in wild strokes on the floor. Another added green lines over it with no hesitation. They saw the performance, Alara said quietly. Their instructors told them to make something that didn't follow any pattern. Jax watched them in silence. He felt a strange, warm ache in his chest. It wasn't that they understood human art now. It was that they knew it was okay not to understand and still feel something anyway. Later that evening, Jax stood at the observation deck. The stars outside were endless. Alien ships blinked in the distance. Earth shimmered in the far-off glow, small but steady. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Vorjan stood there, quiet as a shadow. They didn't speak at first. Then Vorjan said, "Without looking at Jax, when I was young, my father died during a flight malfunction. I was told to return to my studies the next day. No one spoke of him again." Jax turned slightly, listening. "I thought that was strength," Vorjan continued. "Until last night, when your memory of loss echoed in that room. I remembered my father's voice for the first time in years." He finally turned to face Jax. "I do not agree with your methods, but I no longer doubt your meaning." Jax nodded. That was enough. Vorjan walked away. In the final hours before his departure, Jax returned to his studio one last time. He left a message on the wall, scrawled in messy black ink. "Chaos is just emotion with no map. Let it lead you anyway." He powered down the lights. As the ship carrying him back to Earth pulled away from Helios, Jax watched the station fade behind him. He didn't know what would come next for himself or for humanity, but he had opened a door. And somewhere out there, in the cold and quiet galaxy, someone was beginning to feel.